This is Kevin Pruitt with Rising Tide Startups, and my guest today is Kirk Penn. Kirk, thanks for joining us on Rising Tide.
Hi, Kevin. Thank you very much for having me. It's a real privilege to be here. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate that, and it's our privilege to have you as a guest. But I'm just curious that can you share a little bit about who Kirk Penn is to our audience?
Sure. So I'm a Kiwi, originally from New Zealand, and currently living in Australia. I've been here for 11 years. And so I'm an IT consultant fundamentally, and we live just north of Sydney, around about 80 kilometres or 50 miles north of Sydney in a quiet little beach town.
Thanks for translating that for us.
No problem. And so, yeah, we live just north of Sydney in a quiet little beach town here, and been married for 17 years. I've got 3 children, which keep my wife and I very busy. But yeah, we started my business, Service Management Specialists, around about 10 years ago now, and have really just enjoyed the journey so far. It's been a lot of hard work, but so far so good.
Well, I appreciate you kind of touching on the family side. I always appreciate when the guests do that because, a lot of times they just kind of launch right into, well, this is what I do for the business and just go on past that. And I mean, I love the fact that you share, family, where you live, that type of thing. Cause I think it really paints a holistic picture as we listen to the rest of the chat here. But so tell me, education wise, I mean, how did you get into IT in the first place?
Sure. So my background, when I first left school, I was a drummer in a band. So I played music for quite a few years.
Perfect strategic path from drummer to IT. I mean, everybody does it.
Absolutely. So I couldn't be a musician, so I was a drummer. And so really, I got to a point where I was playing 6 nights a week and I was working in a music store 6 days a week. And so I got to a point really where I just knew that if I wanted to have a family, if I wanted to have a lifestyle and a future that I really wanted, I needed to get a real job. So my career started in a call center, very basic level 1 customer call center. And it was a great insight for me because it was quite a shock, but also a really good understanding of how corporates were structured and the whole corporate environment.
Sure.
So it was a real eye-opener for me to get that understanding. My background prior to that, I had some education obviously throughout high school, but really at that stage I was trying to understand exactly where I wanted to go and what I wanted to do.
Now was the call center in Australia? Was it still New Zealand at that time?
Yeah, the call center was in New Zealand. I was working for one of the large banks in the call center. So the structures within that bank and how that call center was set up was really well defined. So it was really working quite well. And so I got a really good insight into understanding how all that worked, and really, really good experience for me.
So I got to ask you, I mean, I imagine kind of this friendly, like warfare that goes on between New Zealand and Australia. So what made you cross the ocean there and go to the dark continent?
Sure. So if we fast
and what
forward,
was her name?
Yeah, my wife's a Kiwi as well, so we both moved together, which was a lot of fun. I guess the way that it worked is that I got this job in a call center working, and I was also very much interested in personal development, and that's always been part of my thing that I've always had a real interest in personal development and learning. So I wanted to apply some of those principles when I got into that corporate world, and I did that. And I did that simply by whatever I was asked to do, I always did more. And that led me to team leader roles and to management roles. And so I found myself, within a short space of time, the next step for me was getting into general management, and then it would have been, executive management and so on. So obviously enjoyed that path. It was a bit of a ride actually, but I kept that principle in mind around doing more than was asked for me, and it worked really, really well for me. But I got working for a consulting company, a process consulting company, and I worked for them for 5 years, and I've worked on various projects, IT projects. And I think fundamentally for me, I've always been interested in process and always been interested in organization and structure. I find that getting things sorted out really help on a number of levels. So it's always been a passion of mine. So 2008, GFC happened. I was working for a process company, and they had introduced me to a concept called ITIL. And that's the IT Infrastructure Library, which was introduced by the UK office government back in the 1980s. And really the background behind that is that it's a set of practices, a set of books originally that helped IT projects to run better. So the UK government at that time was bleeding cash and bleeding funds, and they had multiple programs running, but no structure behind how they would run that.
Is that about the time they were trying to build the Concorde with France as well as?
Absolutely. So they were trying to save money, obviously, on that,
right.
and pour it into their IT projects. So I was fortunate enough to get introduced to ITIL at that point, and the consulting company I was working for put me through and got me trained in that area. And as I said, in 2008, when the GFC happened, I wanted to actually establish a practice around using this terminology, this methodology called ITIL. And we had a discussion, remember that discussion where we talked about setting up a practice specifically focused on this area. And they said, no, Kirk, we don't know what's going to happen. So we want to focus in on what we do best and stick to our normal processes. So that led me to exploring other areas, and one of those being obviously Australia, and taking a contract to become work on a major program over here.
But you were, I mean, by that time, because you had that certification or that training, I mean, that just opened doors to things that you wouldn't have been able to explore prior to that time. So when you made that shift, was it in kind of the ITIL space?
Absolutely, and I knew that that was an area that I really wanted to work in, and I think fundamentally, for me, the moment in time that I realized was I came out of the training, and I was on this path to becoming an expert in this field. And I thought, well, if there's a defined process, if there's a defined methodology of how you actually run your IT shop, why isn't everyone using it? And that moment for me was a real eye opener. So I decided, well, I'm going to get on this path, and I'm going to go and talk to as many people as I can about it. And it was my passion.
So, I mean, is that virtually what you do today? I mean, it's kind of turned into your own agency, you know, you created around this particular like methodology. Is that, or have you evolved into something else, kind of a new iteration, or is it basically you built something around still the kind of the consistent framework that was developed by the UK government?
Sure. So absolutely. Look, we do both. So really the practice is focused at, and I'll probably explain it quite clearly as well. We're really the Marie Kondo of IT.
Oh, wow.
So
I was going to expect you to say the Uber of the Airbnb of, but Marie Kondo, that works too. So
sure. So if you think about, you know, how Marie comes in and organizes your home, and why does she do that? You know, she allows for energy to come through. She allows you to live a better life. So what we do is we come in and we look at your IT area, if you're an organization, and we say, how can we structure that a little bit better? How can we give you, you know, some more flow? How can we allow that energy to flow through your business? And one thing that we have really understanding and is happening globally is the connection between IT and the business. So businesses are obviously really working closely with IT now to enable innovation, to enable new streams of work, new innovation streams within their business. So fundamentally, IT and the business is becoming one. So we're positioned really, really well to help them to overcome their challenges.
now are these almost exclusively internal IT departments? I mean, you're not talking about or outsource IT support. You're talking about internal, correct?
Correct. So we look after, we work specifically with IT, internal IT departments. Now, in saying that, no one does anything by themselves anymore. So they have partners, service providers that plug in as well. And fortunately, the framework that we use allows us to have some best practices around how they deal with their service providers as well. Yeah. So we deal with multiple service providers, technology companies, other consultancies as well.
So it's interesting sometimes when you think about like and I would almost categorize this as like a support service, to kind of their main service offerings or whatever. Do you feel like that sometimes you have to educate the owner on the value of this type of service? Because they're like, it's almost like out of sight, out of mind. I mean, they're just kind of viewing the IT department. Those guys just need to kind of go do their thing, and I don't understand what they're doing anyway. So kind of just, and then you're saying, well, we can actually make that better. We can actually help them improve their services and make them more efficient and all these things that you might add as a added benefit. But do you feel like you have to actually educate the owner before they see the value?
Absolutely, and that's part of our I guess our value is that we work with, and what our goal is to be able to leave that organization so they become self-sustaining. And they've got a lot more of a balance in terms of understanding what they need to go forward, but also having their house in order, I think
Yeah.
is fundamentally
Yeah.
where we're really focused. So it does take a lot of coaching, takes a lot of guidance, takes a lot of understanding and listening. And I think that's fundamentally what we do. If you think about, traditional IT area within an organization, it's scruffy, it's messy, there's wires, there's everything hanging out. We need to come in and just help them to guide themselves. I think IT is such a new area in terms of from an industry perspective.
Yeah, for sure.
That they've just grown so fast, and they haven't actually gone back and said, well, hang on, how do we actually structure ourselves in such a way that we can future-proof ourselves fundamentally.
Right. There's one thing to talk about the aesthetics of the newest iPhone. It's a whole other thing to talk about the aesthetics of a server room. And so there's a bunch of guys that haven't had a haircut in a while, and eat a lot of takeout, are working in this room off by themselves versus something that you actually see and use every day. But I really like the way that you kind of frame that, and it kind of brought to mind this question of proving ROI, or as part of the education process. I mean, some things we can say, hey, we can help you with your marketing, and it will increase your bottom line by this percentage, and we can show you stats, we can show you where you have new leads, new sales, new this. But improving services is a little bit more difficult to quantify. It's a little bit more or at least from a layman's eye like mine. So how do you in essence build that into kind of your sales presentation or the education process? Or how do you, I guess bottom line is, how do you prove the ROI of improved IT services?
Sure. And so this, our work obviously is often very intangible.
Mm-hmm.
So if you think about a typical technology project where we're going to replace this system with a replacement system, it's going to cost you X amount of dollars over this amount of time, which is either going to be more expensive or cheaper, but you're going to get this value out of it. Our work is broken into really sort of 4 key parts, and that's around people, it's around processes, and it's around the technology as well. And fundamentally the partnerships. So which partnerships are you using to be able to get that service? So when you start to break it down into those kind of 4 key areas, it becomes very intangible. And so there's a mix of things here going on. One is that if we can uplift any bottom line cost, then there's some tangible evidence.
Sure.
The other part is that we focus very much on a level of trust with our clients as well. So we work very much client side. We have nothing specifically to sell. So we don't necessarily go in and try and sell a platform or a technology.
Mm-hmm.
It's really around that continuous improvement, operational efficiency, and really giving them a sense of uplift around how they can work. Now, there's some models, there's calculators, there's business cases that we can help to do that. But I often, get asked, let's get to the numbers. And I'm quite hesitant at times to be able to get right into it, because hand on heart, this is an intangible improvement that we're delivering.
Right. So tell me what the typical, say, CIO of a company or a CTO of a company that knows you're coming in to help them, is there a little reluctance? Is there a little reticence on their part? Do they almost see you as the outside consultant that's going to come in and eat and find all their deficiencies and I mean, so how is that happy marriage?
Sure. Look, it depends. And we have a lot of clients that are CIOs. And fundamentally, I think the best time for us to come in is when they're reasonably new in the organization. So they've had a few months with their legs under the desk to understand where and how they need to be. But they don't necessarily know what the plan is to be able to improve. So, so that's the time for us to come in and really build that trust, get client side. So you can imagine a new CIO who's being inundated with service providers and consultants and people wanting to sell them platforms. They need some trusted advice and some advisory really about which parts do they want to snap off first and break down. And that's really where we can come in and help them. When we start to work with the teams, to your point earlier, I think, yes, it can cause some unrest. So once we start going in and asking questions and working through that, but at the same time, you know, we try to leave the client in a place where they become self-sufficient, so they know this is for the good of the organization and for the good of the work that we're undertaking. But so yeah, operational efficiencies. Typically, you know, a CIO will say to us, "Look, I've got a couple of key areas that I really want you to unpack and look at," and that's where we come in and add our value.
And I mean, I can see once they got over kind of the initial fear or hesitancy that, you know, they can really see that you would add value to them because, I mean, if you improve their area, they're going to look better too. So, I mean,
Absolutely.
there is certainly a benefit to being able to work well with you. But how long do you typically work with a client?
It really depends. So we can come in and do like a typical assessment of, you know, where their maturity is at and
Hmm.
give them a roadmap and a plan within a matter of weeks. So that could be, you know, 3 to 4 up to sort of 6 weeks. We often can offer mentoring as well, so coaching. So that could be over, say, 6, 12 months, where we don't necessarily get involved with the teams, but we work with the leadership team
Right.
to identify key areas and help them to become a lot more sustaining. But we also get involved in the delivery as well. So, for example, we've identified some key areas that need improvement, and then we'll bring our consultants in to help deliver that. The thing for us as well in our consulting business is that our delivery part is quite heavy. So, you know, we can't, once we get involved, we're really involved. So
Right.
you have to make those decisions up front of, you know, how the client wants to engage. But everything from guidance, advisory, and, you know, one thing I've noticed and learned over the last sort of 5 to 10 years is that it's lonely at the top.
For
Um,
sure.
you know, we have executives that want to talk about things, but don't necessarily want to talk about them with their
Hmm.
direct reports. They want some expertise, but you know, their peers may not have that guidance either. So often it's really a conversation that starts those key areas and those engagements.
So when you sit down with a business owner and you're talking about, you know, a contract that you're about to sign, are you looking at it as a project based, or is it like, okay, we're going to get in here and here's kind of our retainer on a monthly basis, and we hope that this is going to be a 3 month process, but it could be 9, it could be, we really don't know until we really dig in? Or have you, by that time, have you dug in deep enough that you know this is going to take 9 months, this is going to take 18 months, this is going to take, you know, whatever that is, and I can give you that this is what it's going to cost for us to do what needs to be done here?
Sure. So typically our work is normally part of a, you know, a digital transformation that the
That
organization's
makes sense. Yeah.
undertaking, or you know, they've got an initiative where they need to improve, typically an enterprise level or of some significant improvement. So we take it typically in stages. So we'll do the assessment, we'll understand the landscape, and then play that back and give them some options around, you know, you may want to take this path here, which is looking at an 18-month journey. There's some tactical fixes that we can apply within 3 months that are going to give you this level of maturity. And so that open dialogue will then determine the amount of time in which we spend with the client as well. And, some of them are even very much just their eyes are opened as soon as we can identify some gaps
Sure.
and want to bring their teams in so that the teams actually lead that improvement
Mm-hmm.
rather than a consultancy.
Yeah.
So it really depends on a mix. And, we've had clients that we've worked with for years, and we keep taking off parts that they want improvement on.
Right.
So that's really how it works.
Well, I really like the way, and I can go back to a word you used earlier, when you talked about trust. You've got to develop a level of trust with a business owner as especially one that is saying, okay, you did so well in this area right here. Now we're going to take on this next project or this next area. And I mean, you're top of mind to them as well, because you delivered on what you said you delivered the first time they worked with you. And this is such a crucial time to really develop trust and be real and relational and you know really interact with obviously it's digitally, but interacting with clients because of what we're facing just globally right now, this global pandemic, this COVID-19. So I'm really curious how you've kind of what effect it's had on your business. Is I mean, one question that comes to mind too is in a tightening market, is your service looked at as a luxury or a necessity? And how you've kind of navigated that right now.
Absolutely. So look, it's absolutely had an impact on us, and 10 years of building a business to a level where we're living, a very great life, and we've built a great business. Within a matter of days, things changed, and we are looked on as a continuous improvement function at a board level, I guess. Where what I noticed within days is that organizations, fundamentally started to look at continuity.
Yep.
What do we need to do to keep the lights on?
Yeah.
And that was a real shock for us. A lot of contracts just got put on hold, and fair enough too. It was very much a time of the priorities changed. How do we get our workforce to be working from home remotely?
Yeah.
How do we ensure that network is sustainable? And so that focus did change, and it certainly had an impact on us, and gave me a good insight, into the fact that, we've been going along for a long time very well. But what I do know is that at a fundamental level, in terms of building relationships, those foundations have been set. And, we're people at the end of the day. People, and this is real. This is real what we're dealing with. So it was a matter of just allowing people to cool off, work through what was important to them at that time to keep the lights on, but also just to let them know that we're here when they're ready. And, it's human nature to be constantly growing and constantly looking for improvement. And within the last week or two, people are coming out of hibernation, getting that confidence again, and starting to engage.
Yeah.
So it's definitely had an impact.
Well, I mean, just carry on in that same vein, that same line of thinking, and just speak to our listeners as a founder, as a CEO. How do you, what are one or two tips that you really, give us hope that we're going to get through this and come out on the other side? I mean, what are two or three things that you would do as a founder to speak into the lives of your team members or even yourself? I mean, even playing head, get in your own headspace and say, this is what we've got to do. So just two or three steps, fundamental steps right now that you think are crucial to lead well in this time of crisis.
Absolutely. So, I mean, fundamentally, relationships have always been the number one thing for us. And understanding, I think, first and foremost, that we're people and that we have lives that are actually more important outside of our work. And it's not until we get those sorted out that we're actually able to provide value in our work. So, this whole global crisis at the moment has impacted us at an absolute fundamental level. It's impacted everybody. So I think for me, bringing the team together, it's been around listening. It's been really about understanding their and everyone's individual situation that they've got going on and their different pressures, And then, working together in terms of a collective. How can we support each other? We've all got strengths and weaknesses that we can plug the gaps around where people are not feeling so good around certain areas. So again, as a leader, rolling up my sleeves, getting on with the fact that this is happening to everybody and that I'm no different to everybody else has been fundamental. And I think, I think this is a great opportunity for us to, become a bit more real with our day-to-day interactions. And I'm quite excited about that to ensure that it's not all about moving forward and driving and
Right.
bringing in the revenue. It's about actually just stopping for a moment, checking in with people, and ensuring that those relationships remain strong.
I mean, I love especially like the third point you just talked about, realizing, kind of laying the foundation of where we are. We're dealing with people, understand this is happening to everyone, but once that realization happens that we are going to pull together collectively, we're still going toward the vision. The pathway may look a little different. The vehicle may look a little different, but we still have our basic vision. We still have our ethos. We still have the goals that we're striving for. But at the end of the day, we are pulling together collectively. And I think that's just what employees need to hear. They need to hear that, I am the CEO, and it is lonely here at the top sometimes, but we are in this together, and we are going to pull through this together, and we can see light at the end of the tunnel. So I really like the way that you framed that. And as we wrap up today, I mean, I could continue to ask you questions all day, but as we wrap up today, is there anything that we haven't touched on that you would just like to leave us with? And then just tell people where the best place to find you online if they want to know more.
Absolutely. So we're open for business. We're open for a chat. I'd welcome an opportunity to have a chat with you if you have some areas that we may be able to help with and provide that guidance. I think fundamentally from here on in, I'm hoping that we become a bit more human again. Those fundamental connections continue. And you can find out more about me. Please feel free to connect up with me on LinkedIn. So it's Kirk, K-I-R-K Penn, P-E-N-N, and we're servicemanagementspecialists.com. You can take a 30-minute consult with me for absolutely free on servicemanagementspecialists.com. So if you have questions around that, then I'm more than happy to reach out.
Kirk, do you work mainly in Australia, or can you work globally?
We do work globally. We have worked globally, and obviously, working remotely as well. We mainly focus. A lot of our delivery has been here in Australia, and also broader around Asia Pac as well.
Right.
So, but we do provide guidance and mentoring and globally as well.
Well, Kirk, thank you for really just adding a very human face and a human personality, and to really personalize this interview and make it very authentic and empathetic, in this time. I mean, that has just shown through the entire interview that this is not about just X's and O's and dollars and cents. This is actually about people at the end of the day. And I know that if you lead like that, you lead well. And I just want to thank you for taking the time and just playing your part in helping all boats rise in a rising tide. Kirk, thanks again for joining us.
Thank you very much, Kevin. And thank you so much for the opportunity. And as I said to you off camera earlier, the first time I started listening to your podcasts, I was hooked. And, you're the real deal. You really hit people where they need to be hit and make it real. So thank you again for providing this, and all the very best to your community. And I do really appreciate that. Thank you.